Okay, welcome back. We're going to take a look at another single verse. This time we're going to look at Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. Um, Again, if you have just joined us or you don't have it from last time, a link in the blog itself to two documents, one being called Steps to Making Observations, and the other just a kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, titled Things to Observe. And so grab those, print them out, get a copy. Just going to try and walk through the process again in another passage. And so what we see here in Joshua chapter 1, verse 8, if we begin our process with the steps recorded, again, always begin with prayer, always read the context as much as possible. We're going to assume that you've done that to this point, but we start with looking at the words in the passage itself. And I maybe I'm different than others in this, but I like to typically first identify my conjunctions. And I've laid them out a little differently for us here to highlight them even more. But these three words, at least there's more, but these three are the conjunctions that really kind of get us going, that connect some things. And so um, we see that this first conjunction is a contrast. Okay, and again, I had mentioned in Sunday school this morning, if you were in a class or if you're not part of it, but all that to say is it's not essential that we understand parts of speech in regards to, oh, can I identify this as a noun or a participle verb, whatever. What we want to ultimately be able to do is know the function of each word or type of word. And so, again, whether you know but is a conjunction or not, what you want to know is how it's functioning. We know it's functioning as a contrast. Competing. It's forcing the competition of two different elements in the sentence that we want to understand. And really, what's being contrasted is this idea of what shall not be done and what shall be done. Okay, shall meditate on, shall not depart from. Okay, again, we have a negative, which this is relatively frequent, I guess. You have a negative concept being contrasted with a positive concept. Okay, now this is just moving through, again, no particular order on my part, just as I'm making observations. But what I want to identify is the element that is, I would say, the subject, so to speak. And in this case, um, it's marked off by what I'm going to say, this book of the law. Now, this phrase is a little bit more complex than just a single subject, but the idea of this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. And so the recipient of all this action is your. Now, again, we're looking at words. We know that the book of Joshua is about Joshua, but what in this passage is taking place, or what context is this in that might be essential for us understanding not only meaning, but in terms of making good observations? What we want to see is, I'll pull up a passage here. Hopefully this works. This is, if you'll note, in the context of after the death of Moses, and he's further titled the servant of the Lord. The Lord said to Joshua. Okay, now this is important because we know that verse 8 is in the context, highlight this here, verse 8 is in the context of dialogue. And so I'm just going to write this up here. It's in the context of dialogue, and it is God speaking. Okay, it isn't a conversation so much as it is, here's some instruction. So as we kind of look through here, we, again, significant is the death of Moses. As we move further down here, a reminder of Moses' passing. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan. Okay, so this is a significant moment in Israel's history. Moses was not allowed to go across the Jordan from his disobedience, and if you read the history of Moses, there's definitely more insight into that. But ultimately, we have a promise that's reiterated here. Again, go over this Jordan, and you and all this people into the land that I am giving to them. Okay, that's going to be important. When we look down a little bit further in our passage, again, we could look and should look at all of this information prior to just jumping into the middle of a verse, but for sake of illustration, again, this is helping us understand. We see in verse 6 this phrase, be strong and courageous. Okay, we also see kind of a repeated concept to be strong and very courageous. And then we move down into verse 9 and we see this be strong and courageous again. So, again, just some repeated words, repeated phrases in the larger context. Let's see if I can get this technology to work for me here. So we have this repeated 3 times, and that's, again, we're looking at a verse, but this gives us some context of where our verse is taking place. 3 times in the surrounding context, in verse 9, and verse 7, and verse 6, you have this idea of be strong and courageous. Okay, why? Well, because you're going to be the one, Joshua, that moves these people into the land. Uh, Only be strong and courageous, being very careful to do according to all the law of Moses. So here's a to do according to the law of Moses. We noticed, if we remember from our verse, we have this word law again mentioned. We have the idea of to do according to all that is written in it. Again, so these concepts that are being repeated that are just helping us understand the context. So we've made some really generic, quick observations here, but I want to move back to the actual passage so that we can make some more detailed observations there. So we have a little bit of the context, and again, I usually like to write out my context in a box up. In a box up here in the right-hand column or right-hand side, left-hand, just for time's sake, I'm not going to do that. But just some pertinent information that might help me in the process of making observations that'll benefit me as we go on. Now, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. Okay, so we have the word, or this concept of a negative and a positive. The next part, you shall meditate on it day and night. Now, the word meditate is a word that we probably hear often and probably are familiar with what it means, but in case not, it's really something that we are to chew on, to spend time thinking about, to, it's almost a slow murmur, not in a sense of, opening your mind up for whatever might come in, but rather focusing the attention of your mind on, in this case, the book of the law. So there's almost a parallel between meditate and mouth and the whole concept of departing and being with. Okay, you can't meditate. I mean, at least in the Hebrew mind, meditating implied that you were using your mouth, speaking it under your breath, thinking about it over and over and over again. And so what that leads us to is this next little phrase here at the end of this section, and we have day and night. So we ask ourselves, okay, is Joshua literally to be meditating on it day and night? Well, I'm going to mark this off as a possible figure of speech. I want to know, is it really something he is literally supposed to be doing day and night, or is it kind of communicating the idea of, okay, this is an important thing that we really need to focus on, or in this case, Joshua really needs to focus on. Now, notice that what we move to from there is, okay, the positive and negative contrast. Again, this last part is, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that. Okay, meditating on it day and night is a cause. And then this so that idea is really a purpose statement. And I'll mark this off here, is talking about a purpose. Okay, what is the purpose? Well, we don't have to think or read far to see that you may be careful to do. That you may be careful to do is the purpose of this. So in other words, meditating is related to this idea of action in a, I'm going to make an edit here real quick, is related in terms of cause and effect. Okay? You're meditating the cause for the effect of being careful to do this. Now, one of the things that we see in some contexts, the idea of according to all that has been written in it. This according to is really a standard or a limiting factor. Okay, this word according to is referencing a standard, that all that you do is according to something, is a standard to something, it's compared to something. And all that you are to do is what's written in it, which is this book of the law that we are not letting depart from our mouths and that we are meditating on continuously. And ultimately, again, the relation so that we will be careful to do all that is in it. Now, the word for, this next conjunction, is what's typically what you could call it an explanatory conjunction. It's explaining why what's been said beforehand. We have some more time references. Then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Now, I'm going to mark off my coordinating conjunction here, but we see that these two ideas of you will make your way prosperous and then you will have good success are, again, directed towards Joshua as he's moving into and leading the nation of Israel into the promised land. But they're also an effect as well. Okay, the cause of all this has been this idea of meditating. Okay. So they can ultimately do it, and the last part of this effect are these two ideas. Now, again, there's way more to be observed in this passage. Notice the way that this thing, that the layout progresses in terms of what's being done. Just in reference to some concepts, you have speaking up here, you have thinking here, and you have action here. Now, these are things that we may want to investigate further at some point, but for right now, I'm just kind of marking them off so that we know that there's something there to be looked at further. Okay, I'm going to quit there with this. Again, this was intended to be hopefully a short video to kind of, again, bring to mind some things to be looking for as you study the text. Again, in the observation stage, we're not looking for meaning, we're looking for what the text says. We'll ask the question, what does it mean, later, but we first have to ask and answer, what does the text say? Thanks, and again, I hope you have a great time studying God's Word.